Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this show on the Delta Report on Monday, December 19th, 2022. Thank you for tuning in. Glad to have you guys here. Now, what I want to talk about is nuclear war in this show. And it's probably not would be exactly what you guys would expect at all. During the Cold War, we were preached to for the longest time that it would equal a nuclear winter. It would equal the extinction of the human race, an awful lot of other things that I believe, now this is personally my opinion, these things are basically mythology, or myth. I'm going to explain to you what I think it would actually amount to. And why I'm explaining this is because the situation is actually starting to get kind of dire between the United States and Russia. And I'm saying between the United States and Russia, I'm not saying between Ukraine and Russia. Okay, there's a big difference there. I know the United States has not officially entered the war, but just because something is not official doesn't mean that that's not what's really happening. I believe that this war that we're seeing right now is actually an extension of a trade war that began between China and the United States years ago. And it's morphed. It's changed. It's taken different directions. And I believe that all the things that we've been through, and we've been through a lot since 2019 until now, have all been part of this war. A third world war. It's already, basically you could ask the question, and I'm going to ask the question right now, are we in a third world war? And a lot of other people are asking this question. I was one of the first ones to ask this question. And I was rhetorically asking this question. Because I know, kind of had a really good idea. I had a really good idea what's really going on with the bioweapon that we saw that came in 2020. At the beginning of 2020. I'll call it the bioweapon. And now you guys know what a bioweapon's like. A mild bioweapon. So what we're talking about here is weapons of mass destruction. We're talking about weather seeding of the clouds and stuff, and weather manipulation through things like HARP. And you have all seen now what the effects of that can be. You've seen it for yourself personally. You've been hit by a storm or something that's unusual in the weather that you never seen before 2019. Just about everybody in my audience has been hit by something. Whether you live in the Midwest or someplace and you've seen a tornado, or maybe you've seen a hailstorm, or maybe you've seen an ice storm that was unusually fierce, or maybe it was water trying to come into your house, some sort of a rainstorm that you've never seen before with multiple inches of rain and one big bush. It just stuff. All of you have seen it, and it's weather manipulation. Man can now manipulate the weather, and they can use this in warfare. They don't want the people to know. This is why the whole thing's a subterfuge, or under the surface. It's not something you can visibly see or put your finger on that we're at war. But what I'm going to get down to, and really the topic of this discussion, is what's it going to look like for you when the real bad stuff hits, when Russia launches an attack or the United States launches an attack that's called a first strike. And this gives them a big advantage, so both sides are probably thinking the same thing right now. First strike advantage. Russia is not preparing their nuclear weapons right now because they think the United States is not thinking about a first strike advantage. And this is why Russia is siloing their missiles right now. Possibly for their own first strike advantage, or to protect themselves against the United States first strike advantage. And this is why they're loading their missiles with things like hypersonics. Okay, so we're going to get in there, we're going to take a look at this stuff, and we're also going to talk about what's it going to be like for you. Is it going to be like all this mutually assured destruction and the world's going to end and you're going to die? Is that what it's going to be? Or is it going to be a little bit something different? I think it's going to be a little bit something different that you need to prepare for now. And I believe it is survivable. But you got to know what you need to know in order to survive it. I'm going to talk about some of this stuff in this show. Let's get started. Let's open up the charts right here and talk about this. The United States observed the Russian Navy preparing for possible test of a nuclear-powered torpedo. Now look at this thing. It's bigger than a house, what you're seeing being held by this crane. This is a nuclear missile that is extremely dangerous. And why it's extremely dangerous? It can float on the bottom of the ocean for months, very slowly creeping across the bottom of the ocean where nobody can see it or detect it. There could be multiple, there could be as many as 5 of these things creeping around on the ocean floor right now, because this was months ago. Well, let me see, what was the date? This was November 10th. That they're testing them. They're out there, they're floating around in the ocean right now, a whole bunch of these. And what do? Okay, I'll tell you what they do. They sneak up on the coastal area of a big city. Like, say, New York, for instance. Now, it has to be a coastal city, and there's a lot of coastal cities, like New Orleans, New York. I could name a number of coastal cities. Miami. You know, I think it's San Francisco. I think it's coastal. Anyway, coastal cities. They sneak up. This thing sneaks up until it gets a few miles off the coast. And it's still in deep water, so nobody even knows it's there. And then it blows up. And when it blows up, it makes a wave 1,500 feet high. If you can believe that, but it's true. It makes an enormous wave because this is a very powerful nuclear weapon. It makes what's called a tidal wave, or a tsunami. An immensely big tsunami that rolls over the city. But not only that, the tsunami is full of radioactive waste. The water is just so full of radioactivity that you cannot survive. Even if the water comes, even if you don't get wet by it, the radioactivity that's going to come off of it, it's just going to. And that city is then, from then on in, uninhabitable ever again. Because I believe that this weapon, I'm not absolutely certain, but I think this is a cobalt weapon. In other words, the nuclear material is made from cobalt. Now, I'm not certain about that. But I think it is. I'm not sure. But it'll destroy that area. You cannot even build a city. You cannot even rebuild a city after. This is what's called a Doomsday weapon. And what else is going on? Let me see here. We're going to take a look at this. This is a meteorite type weapon produced by Russia, and they're loading it right now into their silos. And they're shutting the silo doors and they're readying it to be fired. Avant-garde hypersonic missile. And it flies at multiples of the speed of sound. It's a tremendously powerful weapon system that's much more powerful than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. As much as 18 times more powerful. And it can hit anywhere in the United States. And they're preparing these weapons, the strategic force of Russia right now. And why are they preparing? Why do I think that they're preparing all these weapons? Is because they're trying to defend themselves from what they perceive could be a first strike by the United States. And Russia is probably also thinking about their option of first strike as well. So, what else we see here is, we're going to take a look right now at a Russian submarine launching a Beluga ballistic missile. Now these missiles launched from the submarines. The submarines, both with the United States and Russia, why the United States puts most of their nuclear weapons on submarines is because they can stay hidden under the water and they cannot be taken out. And at least not easily. And so the United States has a tremendous amount of ballistic missiles on submarines, and so does Russia, both aimed at each other. And we're going to take a look at this right now. And where would they aim these missiles on these submarines for the most part? For the most part, they're going to aim them at land-based missile silos. See, there's several different ways that they deploy missiles, these missiles. And one of the ways they deploy them is in silos. They put them down inside the ground, inside basically a hollow spot in the ground with a door on top of it. When they get ready to fire them, they open the door and the missile launches out from underneath the ground. This is a really big target for the other side because they don't want the other side to launch their missiles. They want to blow them up in the silos before they can launch them. So a lot of the submarines are aimed at these silos on both sides. The Russians have their missiles aimed at our silos. We have our missiles aimed at their silos. And this is why first strike is so important, to take out the silos before the silos can launch. It's kind of like who attacks first. And so now what we have is we're going to see a picture right here of a missiles being launched from a Russian submarine. Here we go. Now watch this whole clip. Okay, here we go. The submarine is getting ready to fire. It's underneath the water. And here it goes. Boom, it's going to fire. It's firing up the first one. There, the first one's off and away. Now this could be what happens and what you would see if you were in a boat not far from a United States or a Russian submarine and they were launching nuclear missiles toward either of the other countries. In other words, Doomsday. If you see this, if you were out in a boat, you're out in a boat someplace fishing on the ocean, and you saw this happening, this would mean Doomsday is happening. This would mean Armageddon is on its way to both countries, the United States and Russia. And so this would not be a happy sight. This means that it's like the day after tomorrow. We're going to see mushroom clouds popping off. So what we're going to talk about is, now I explained to you guys, what would this look like for you? Well, first off, during the Cold War, they had an exceedingly great number of these missiles built up, and they were all ready to go. They were all fresh and new. They were in their bunkers and everything else, and they had enough to cause a nuclear winter and basically destroy all life on Earth. But then they went through years of dismantling their nuclear arsenals, which is a very good thing. So now their nuclear arsenals are about 1/10 the size that they were during the Cold War. And not only that, to compound that, an awful lot of these missiles have been sitting in silos, especially Russian missiles, sitting in silos for years. And if you know anything about maintenance and stuff, it's very hard to do maintenance when your country is undergoing like the fall of the former Soviet Union and change into the new Russia. The missiles, it's very hard to keep them up to date and stuff during a period like that. But what we're also looking at is the United States had to keep up too. And the United States, because of their enormous defense budget, has done a better job of keeping their missiles up, replacing missiles in silos with new, more modernized missiles and stuff. But Russia's trying to keep up with that too. Don't underestimate Russia and their missile force. But the United States, probably on newness and freshness of their missiles and ready to go status, probably Russia might be not quite keeping up as good because of the enormous defense budget of the United States. Especially under the last administration, the United States spent an awful lot of money on defense. So this would include what was formerly known as the Strategic Defense Initiative, started by Reagan, the Reagan era, and they've been working for many years, the United States, at strategic defense from nuclear threat. And now it's morphed into the space programs, or space-based programs that can protect America from nuclear threats, including Russian nuclear threats. And I think personally this money was well spent, because right now we're never been in more danger than ever from a nuclear threat from Russia. But to counter this threat is why Russia is building these weapons like this one here, the impossible to intercept, it says, Avangard hypersonic missile from Russia, and it's being loaded in right now, the Russian Defense Ministry is the Russian Defense is loading this in. It says the Avangard is a hypersonic glide vehicle that is entered service in December of 2019 and can be fired by various ICBMs, including the country's newest and most advanced intercontinental ballistic missile, the RS-28 Sarmat. And why the Russians built the RS-28 Sarmat is so that they can evade United States defense systems. But they're limited in the amount. They're trying to build these as fast as they can, but they're limited in the amount of them. Now, why all this is such a danger is because we've got more going on here. Let me show you guys what's going on here. Look at this. Armageddon-like explosion rips through a strategic Russian oil field in a sabotage attack. You see, deep within Russia now, over the last week or two, we've seen a new escalation in this war. We've seen airfields being attacked with nuclear weapons on them inside Russia that are nuclear-capable airfields being attacked by drone attacks there a week or so ago. And nobody's really, I don't think anybody's claimed responsibility. I think the Russians said that Ukraine did it or whatever, but I'm just not sure about that. Okay, so don't quote me on that. But maybe they did claim responsibility for it, but I don't think anybody's claimed responsibility. It was an attack deep inside Russia, almost as far deep as Moscow. And now we see these Armageddon-like explosions ripping through strategic Russian oil fields in a sabotage attack deep inside Russia again. These attacks are occurring, and this attack, I'm almost thinking to myself, maybe it's something like guerrilla warfare happening. And how long is Russia going to put up with this? Well, maybe they will put up with it, but you know, there's also the threat of a first strike from both sides, and so everybody's got their finger on the button right now. Let's just put it this way, and this is worse than the Cold War. We got more tension out there. So what do I think it would look like for you? And maybe I should explain why I think this. I think, simply put, if we get a World War III, probably in your community, you probably just won't see anything unusual. You probably won't see any mushroom clouds or any loud blasts, or you probably will not be vaporized. And I know you're probably countering this and saying, Glenn, we've all been told if nuclear war comes and we go to World War III and they launch all their missiles, that we're all going to be vaporized and there's going to be mushroom clouds everywhere and nuclear radioactivity falling from the sky. And here I'm telling you, you probably won't see any of that. And I'm going to explain to you why. It's because the primary targets are mostly these silos. I think most of them are out in the Midwest, unless you're close to those. If you're close to those, yes, you're going to see a lot of mushroom clouds, because those are the primary targets. But there's secondary targets, and if you're near a secondary target, you'll probably see the mushroom clouds. And the secondary targets are the heaviest urban centers, where there's the heaviest, most dense population. Those are secondary targets. And so, yeah, but if you're away from those target areas, most of the people in my audience probably are. Your city, wherever it is in America, is probably one of these smaller cities, maybe a rural location or whatever. You can only see these mushroom clouds if you're within like 50 miles of them, and you're close to it. So most likely, you'll probably be in an area that's more than 50 miles away from the nearest one, mushroom clouds. You're probably not going to see it. You might hear a little dull thud sound off in the distance. It might rattle your windows a little bit. You know, and I mean, it's probably not going to be something that's really all that noticeable for you. Now, the sky might turn the next day. The sky might turn a little bit dusty. You want to stay inside, because that's called fallout, and it'll come down in the rain. Do not go out in the rain. So what to look for? Because you won't know that this has happened. This is what I'm trying to tell you guys. If we get this nuclear war, and we could, you're not going to know it happened. If you're, more than likely, you'll be too far away from where the bombs go off to see the bombs. And what you're going to see is just everything's going to go dead. Your internet's going to go dead. Your power's going to go dead. Your car's going to go dead. Everything. Your phone's going to go dead. Everything's going to go dead for you and your whole community. And what happens when that happens? You don't know why everything went dead. And this is why it's important you listen to my show, because the next day you might see the sky's kind of brown color. And you won't know why. And you're out there in the yard. And it might rain the next day. And you might be out in the rain. And you won't know why. You won't know. The things I'm telling you are vital important. Because if the sky turns brown the next day, after the powers all went out, and your phones went dead and everything's dead, and you don't know why, it could be nuclear war. And especially if the sky looks like there's been a fire or something. Stay inside. And whatever you do, don't go outside or don't let the rain get on you. Do not get in the rain. You will die. Especially the rain. So the signal to look for is everybody not knowing what happened. The power's out, everything's down, everything's out, and there's no news on why. Power doesn't come back on. Possibly it changes in the sky or in the weather. These are the signals that there's been a nuclear war. Not what you think. Not seeing the mushroom clouds. You might not see the mushroom. In fact, there's a high probability you won't. And so you need to understand that there still could be fallout in your region, even if you do not see any mushroom clouds or anything like that. And that's what you got to be aware of. For the first, I'm going to say the worst danger period is 72, maybe 96 hours after. You need to stay inside. You need to shelter in place. Your house is a wonderful shelter. Shut your windows. Close up all your windows. Don't open your windows. Don't open your front door. Stay in as possible you can. If your bed is near a window, push your bed into the center of the room. And why I'm telling you all this is because radiation radiates outward for like several feet. And it's going to be the highest radiation doses near your walls of your house or near your roof. That's where the fallout's landing outside. Stay indoors during those days. And there's another point that you need to know is that fallout loses 90% of its radioactivity just within a matter of hours or days. Very quickly, it just loses its potential to kill you. Very quickly. And so it becomes safe very quickly. Just in a matter of 2 weeks, it could be so safe outside that you're perfectly fine within a 2-week period. So what does that mean? It means your survival. It means if you can stay out of that radioactivity for a couple weeks, that you might live to be an old person. And as far as the nuclear Armageddon causing a nuclear winter and everybody freezing to death, well, that might be an overestimation by the scientists. So life could go on after a nuclear war. It might be a very bad disruption that might last a year or 2 or 3, where a lot of people die from starvation, maybe including you. So now let's talk about that part of it. Now's the time to put an emergency food supply away in for, I would say, at least 6 months. Because after a nuclear war, that's going to be the thing that people are going to die from the most. Poor sanitary conditions, bad water. This is what people are going to die from. They're going to die from things. They're not going to die from, most people are not going to die from radiation. What they're going to die from is things that, waterborne illnesses. Not having enough food to eat. Things like that. Think about what would happen if the grocery stores are going to all be empty because the power's out. No trucks running anymore. Bring stuff in to replenish the grocery stores. Think about your drugstores are all empty. No more drugs for anybody. Think about prescription drugs, and things like that. Think about how people are going to react when they do not get their meds. They become dangerous, especially when they get hungry and they start forming into groups of people that are going from house to house looking for food and water. Think about how you might need for home defense, what you might need. God, there's so many things that you're going to have to deal with when you can't go down to the gas station anymore and fill up your tank with gas. And people that are out there say, oh, I'm prepared. Guess what I got? I went out and bought myself a generator. Right? And I got a food supply. I've got all kinds of bacon in the freezer or whatever. And they think that's being prepared. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you if you've prepared that way. But first off, you're not going to be able to get any gas for your generator. Second, as soon as you start that sucker up, they're going to hear it for a half a mile away, and they're going to come try to take it from you. The third thing is if that's what's going to run your freezer to keep your bacon from going stinky in your freezer when the power goes out, it's only going to last until you run out of gas, and then it's still going to get warm in your freezer and going to go sour, that meat, and you ain't going to last. You ain't going to be able to keep it. You got to go out and get yourself some canned meat if you want meat, because canned meat can last for years. Things like Spam or whatever. So I know you like bacon. Yeah, but start thinking in terms of Spam, or maybe thinking in terms of canned tuna, or maybe thinking in terms of corned beef in the can, and so on. That's what you need to think of, because that doesn't require the generator. Because when the power's out, you're not going to be able to get gas any longer. Your generator's going to be practically useless. And when a lot of your foods, you got to think in terms of eating them raw, and I'm going to explain to you why. Because when you start cooking your food in your neighborhood, all the other people in your neighborhood are going to smell it. It's funny when people start to starve how well their nose starts to work. Seriously. You got to keep a low profile. Right? So, even now, when you're going out to get this food and stuff, don't go telling everybody, hey, I got the food for the neighborhood, because they're going to come want it after a nuclear attack. See, now you're starting to think in terms of what it's really going to be like. It's really going to be like the system is shut down, and you can't get the things anymore that you need. So you got your bottled water. That'll last you a while. Good for you. You've got enough bottled water to last you for 2 months. Though during those 2-month periods after the system shuts down, don't sit on your ass thinking, okay, I got my bottled water, and nobody else does, na boo boo. Don't sit there thinking that. What you need to do is think about a way to purify water, because when your bottled water runs out, you got to have your new purification method all set up, ready to go, so that you can purify rainwater. And what does that entitle? Well, charcoal. The first step in creating your water purification system is find some sand someplace. Maybe you can find some sand in your driveway or something, rinse the sand, or find some sand someplace, even if you got a lot of mud in your property or whatever, rinse the mud out and find some sand, put some sand together. You're going to have to get some sand. And you're going to have to wash that sand. That's the first step. The second step is find trees on your property that are safe trees. Trees like maple trees. Trees that are like the kind of trees that you could eat stuff that comes from them. Like maple is great because you can eat, the sap from maples is what they make maple syrup out of. It's editable. Don't go for a poisonwood tree. Find a tree that's safe. Build a big bonfire out of the wood from that tree, and then take some water, rainwater or whatever, and dump out the coals. When it gets down to coals, before it's completely burned out, dump the water over it and put it out. Then the next day you go and you pick up those lumps of coal and you put them away for yourself. because that's what you use for your water filter. So what you do is you make layers. You have a little layer of sand. You get a pipe or a bucket or whatever you can find that's going to be your new water filter. Don't use wood. Use something that's left over from our old civilization. You know, a piece of something that's water-safe plastic is great. But make sure that it's something that's clean water-safe plastic. Things like an old milk jug or something like that. Or maybe you put something together. Maybe pop bottles or something to create a tube or whatever. Then put a layer of sand, and then you put a layer of charcoal, a layer of sand, and a layer of charcoal. And now, after you get enough sufficient layers of these sand, charcoal, you can pour water in at the top, and gravity will carry the water down through those layers of sand and charcoal till it comes out the bottom purified. And the next step is you actually should boil that purified water. You don't really have to, probably, but it's an extra measure. And then you can drink that. And that machine that you just created can do thousands and thousands of gallons once you have it built. It's just a matter of pouring the water in through the top, letting it drain out through the bottom into a collecting reservoir, or maybe a pot. Taking the pot over, bringing it to boiling, and then let it cool overnight for your water supply. And you need roughly, per person, you need probably at least a quart, maybe half a gallon's better per person per day. So you can do like a gallon a day, and you can just keep going indefinitely that way with just rainwater or ditch water or puddle water, which are water sources, your normal water sources you can find. Now, see, there's two different kinds of water sources out there. There's groundwater, and then there's surface water. So what you're doing is you are taking and essentially and finding surface water, and you are filtering it and boiling it to get it to purify it. In a crude method, but you're accomplishing that task. Groundwater sources. After a nuclear strike, groundwater sources are going to be probably taken over by armed gangs and protected, because those are going to be just like gold. Groundwater sources. And what a groundwater source is where the water comes bubbling up out of the ground, what they call a spring water. They're around in the country, around here and there and everywhere. There are sources like that. But believe me, these criminals or looters or whatever you want to call them are going to find those sources. And they're going to guard them, because they know that when people come for that water, they're going to be sitting there with their armed, of course, sitting there waiting, and the people come up and they say, "Can I please have a bucket of water?" "Yeah." "What you got there? What are you going to barter me for it?" "Oh, you got a gold watch? Okay. For 1 gallon of water, let me look at that gold watch, make sure it's real gold." "Oh yeah, okay, it's real gold. Yeah, okay, you can have 1 gallon of water." That's how it's going to be. And they're going to have a mountain of gold sitting there next to the spring. There'll be a whole gang of them sitting there. "What do you got? You want 5 gallons of water? Okay, what do you got there? Oh, 3 slices of bread? Yeah, okay, you can have a gallon. You can have some water. Give them some water. Give me your bread." It's going to be that way. So, but if you've got a way of taking and purifying surface water, mud puddles and things like that, that's surface water, then you don't need their groundwater source. You got your own source. And I just told you basically how to do it, if you can remember what I said on this show. That's why this show's important for you guys, because they're pushing. They're hitting Russia right now. They're hitting their oil fields and stuff, and sabotage attacks and stuff like that. And who knows who's doing it? I don't know who's doing it, but I'm suspicious. I'm suspicious that I know who does it, but I'm not going to say. But how long can they keep doing stuff like this? And what happens if Russia starts to sabotage and stuff? The first thing you know, the nukes are flying. You know, I mean, what can I say, guys? You guys got to prepare for this. This could get hairy, really hairy, coming into next year. Because this war ain't going away. And I just see, ever since we went into this whole thing back in 2019 or so, we entered into this new era of this unholy war, trade war, that's morphed now into World War III. I mean, okay, it's not World War III, not officially, okay, but in my mind, that's almost like a Freudian slip, you know. I mean, it's like, it's what it's morphed into, guys. Expect the unexpected. Expect that you might have to go through 6 to 8 months or 4 months or however many months of being on your own with no emergency medical services, no medical services whatsoever. I mean, you could, if you don't, that's another thing, you know, medicines, I mean, are just going to be like what's left of medicines. What's it worth? It's worth your life. A little bit of medicine. I mean, this is the kind of world we're entering into where human life, there's probably going to be a period of time up and coming that might last 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, a year, where human life ain't going to be worth 5 cents because there's so much death around and no way to stop it. Then humanity will become organized again. And they'll look back at this period in history and they'll shake their heads and they'll go, oh my God, how did we do that? You know, remember how the World War II vets said, never again, never again? Well, I'm right with them, boys. I mean, I wish they could have been correct about it. But we're doing it all over again in our stupidity. All we need is a few stupid world leaders to get us into this stuff. I wished it was never again. That's what I hope for. Every day. But this is in their stupidity. Look at this. Armageddon-like explosions ripped through strategic Russian oil field. I would like to see humanity united in one common goal. Productivity. So that no child goes hungry again. But yet they fight this in these stupid, this is stupidity. Incorporated. It's like tit for tat. I'll blow up your oil field and you can blow up my thing, and then I blow up something bigger, and then you always blow up something bigger, and then the next thing you know, the earth is just on fire. It's just pure stupidity. And it seems like humanity can't get their head around how to stop. And so world leaders are doing this stupidity. It's their fight. I just wish you could round them all up, all of them, every damn one of them, and let them fight one another. Hand them crude implements, anything, baseball bats, and let them have at it, and leave us out of it. But no, they involve us. They force us to be involved. In some cases, they come get you and put you in handcuffs and take you in. They put a gun in your hand and they say, now get out there and you use that gun or we'll use a gun on you. And they force you. They force us, the major part of the population, and we never wisen up to any of this. We never see it for what it is, for what extreme brutality it is. We just accept. Why should we accept? We shouldn't accept. Humanity should not accept war any longer. We've become nuclear in a nuclear age, and the time to accept war is over for humanity. Because if we continue to accept war, it's going to be over for all of us. War should be a thing of the past. We need to move on like other civilizations out there, on other places, light years from here have. Move on to a peaceful new future where we can advance rather than be stuck in a rut where we're going to end up all destroying ourselves. Anyway, I'm getting off on a little tear here, but thank you guys for listening to my show, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.